Hey guys, it's Awesomemay here, and I'm not done with this series yet. Welcome to Cancelled Anime and Movies, the finale. Maybe, probably. It has been a full year since the last part came out, and I've been notified of like 100 more cancelled movies. I've been sent so much scrapped concept art to the point I'm starting to feel subconsciously guilty, and I'm not Warner Brothers or Disney. I did not have any involvement in these films being scrapped. This is a never-ending rabbit hole that I have to continue, but not for much longer. This might have to be the last part, as I don't think I can take any more of the sadness knowing I'm living in the timeline of the Minecraft movie, and not the timeline of the Gorillaz feature-length film called Celebrity Harvest that was gonna focus on the sickness of celebrity culture. You know how many millennial teenagers missed out on making this film their whole personality? Hot Topic would have never recovered. Anyways, I went looking and picked out even more cancelled anime and movies that stood out to me, and I'm gonna discuss what happened with their downfalls.
So much for the good times, so much for the fun, so much for the vacation. I should have brought my gun. Hotel hell. If you think the beer is rotten, you should see the clientele.
Starting off strong, we got, of course, the Gorillaz canceled movie, Celebrity Harvest. I was actually gonna put this further down in the video and just have the intro be a foreshadow, but I really want to talk about this movie first. I'm not like too sad about this one, as Gorillaz have always given us enough when it comes to animation. If you want to see Gorillaz animated, just consume Gorillaz, that's the whole thing. They have holograms, they make TikToks now.
I like writing poems because it helps get my feelings out. So give me 3 random words in the comments below and I'll do a poem for ya.
Netflix announced that they're gonna be working with Gorillaz to make a feature-length film. This isn't a Disney Gigantic or Me and My Shadow situation where you're out of luck on such a specific story and set of characters. Gorillaz will probably succeed in the TV or film department one day. Oh, never mind, scratch everything I just said. Celebrity Harvest was put into production right after Gorillaz' first album, Gorillaz, and this movie was gonna feature its own soundtrack that would serve as their second album. Repeating myself, the film's story is said to have taken place in this apocalyptic, endless night-themed world that would explore the toxicity of celebrity culture and the ego that grows with becoming famous and being recognized, a concept that has aged even better over the years. The only real story details other than that are the plot points I found on the Gorillaz wiki. The story would follow the band's drummer Russell, who goes insane and leaves the band, which then creates a ripple effect for the rest of the band members. Starting the end of the Gorillaz pack, Murdoch would then also leave the band to start his own metal band, where he ends up locking the bandmates in the basement of Kong Studios. And due to the metal band members being trapped down there so long, they end up becoming cannibals and attack Murdoch, who then becomes a zombie. Del the Ghost was going to be the main antagonist of the film, becoming evil after being exorcised from Russell by the Grim Reaper. According to concept art, the Grim Reaper was going to play a massive part in this story. If you're not a huge Gorillaz fan, you probably have no idea what's going on and are very confused, because I do think the charm of the band is that there's a lot to keep track of and dig deeper into, but I don't know if that would work with a studio like DREAMWORKS who is producing it. And allegedly the script ended up being 360 pages long, which would be close to a 6-hour movie. The reason for cancellation is probably the easiest answer I've been able to find for a canceled film, and it comes from the band's artist and co-creator Jamie Hewlett himself, who straight up said that DreamWorks wasn't willing to spend millions of dollars on a darker film. DreamWorks wanted to make it into a lighter, family box office sensation, and Gorillaz pulled out immediately, which I'm kind of thankful for. I'd much rather a canceled project than a finished project that doesn't represent the Gorillaz brand.
There was talk of a Gorillaz animated movie, and we were speaking for a long time with a very large animation studio in Hollywood, and in the end, it came down to the fact that they wanted to do a family movie that would have a big box office opening weekend, and that's not really what we do.
Since 2005, when this movie was scrapped, Gorillaz has had almost the same luck as Bone in terms of adaptations trying to be made. I don't know how studios keep fumbling the goldmine that is Gorillaz. Next, we got the scrapped sci-fi 2D animated film developed by Disney veterans in the early 2010s titled Galaxy Gas. Not to be confused with anything else named Galaxy Gas. Yes, 2010s 2D and Disney in the same sentence, oh my god. This film has such a large amount of finished footage and concept art in a 7-minute presentation online, and it instantly stood out to me. Galaxy Gas is described as being this heartwarming sci-fi story featuring featuring drunk aliens and spaceships. You had me at drunk aliens.
You guys partake?
And it all came together starting in 2012 by Craig Peck, a grad school student and Disney intern who had an obsession with hand-drawn features and really wanted to reach out to some of his inspirations in that field to try and bring it back, as he was disappointed with the way Disney abandoned 2D after the 2011 Winnie the Pooh film. He first reached out to Tab Murphy, known for writing on screenplays for Tarzan, Brother Bear, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, to see if he had any ideas to pitch. Tab Murphy ended up pitching the idea of a teenager named Devo who ends up discovering that his father, who runs a gas station in New Mexico, is actually using the gas station to refuel spaceships for aliens. Devo ends up discovering this after reluctantly taking on a job there to finally afford to move out of the trailer park him and his parents have been living in. First of all, I love a good father and son film, and I also think in terms of anime and movies, aliens haven't been done enough justice yet, so this would have cleansed my mind of Escape from Planet Earth. I'm getting kind of a Ben 10 mixed with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs vibe from this pitch footage. There was also gonna be your average hard-to-get love interest named Nicole who would go on a mission with Devo and this sidekick smoking alien named Ace to stop a hostile alien race that's trying to invade Earth. There was a ton of concept art made of mechanic aliens that would serve as comic relief and also help Devo get the girl by the end of the movie.
Hi. Oh my god, you're alive. I thought for a second that maybe you were dead.
After they came up with all of that, they both pitched it to Kirk Wise, who co-directed Beauty and the Beast, Atlantis, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he was on board immediately as he also missed 2D animation and had not directed a feature since Atlantis. Now at first I thought it was an actual Disney project, but it was really an independent film. They set up a weekly sweatbox up the street from Disney where they worked with new animators and OG animators and really tried to capture a homemade vibe and setup. To convince buyers/financiers, they tried to mix the 2D animation with CGI as best they could to not only bring more depth to the characters and spaceships, but also just be more pleasing to the studios, praising CGI, while still not totally forfeiting 2D. Sadly, the movie ended up going under when the unnamed company that was going to distribute the film did not actually have the funds to produce it, and they also had been planning on shutting down, and so the film went on pause and never unpaused. From comments I found on social media, there's quite a few people who are on the side in believing that this film shouldn't have been produced as the character designs and world feel generic and lazy, which I agree a tiny bit. It's not on par with some of the other films on this list, but I like the simple charm of it, and oh my god is this concept art so colorful and eye-pleasing. And with the success of Claws, I could see Netflix taking it on. I could also see how this concept would work a lot better as a cartoon series rather than a feature, and it would probably be more marketable as one. Nowadays, they would have to go through hell and back trying to get people to watch this if it's a theatrical release. The Shadow King is next on our list. I'm so excited for this one. A canceled Disney stop-motion movie directed by the one and only Henry Selick. I'm so surprised I skipped over this one in not just one, but two parts, but I guess it could not fit better in the finale. What do you mean there's a Henry Selick stop-motion movie that already has completed scenes, character models, and is completely lost to time? After seeing the success of Coraline, and of course them working with him on The Nightmare Before Christmas, which he also directed, despite Disney using Tim Burton's success for promo, Disney was eager for another stop-motion movie from Henry, and that's when he presented The Shadow King, originally called The Shademaker, which would follow a 9-year-old orphan in New York named Hap Dagger who has these weird, bloated, oddly long hands that he hides from the world, until he finds power within his hands when a shadow girl teaches and mentors him to make shadow puppets that come to life. And that's when later he has to use these powers to fight a shadow war against a shadow monster that is threatening the city and Hap's brother Richard. Kind of gives me a Scribblenauts vibe, except instead of doodles that come to life, it's shadows. Henry Selick described the plot as a darker Dumbo, following the same sentiment of a character going through ridicule and bullying for having different features, but ends up proving everyone wrong when the differences become superpowers that save. Small clips have been posted to YouTube over the years with a feel of the atmosphere, the personality of the two brothers, and them being very dependent on each other for entertainment. It just feels so likable. Just this short scene alone of Hap giggling over his brother's sleep talking has impalpable charm.
Children of the night, what music they make.
The movie was put into pre-production in 2011 with a 2013 release scheduled. Disney, and mostly John Lasseter, who was chief creative officer at the time at Disney before you know what, started having problems and a change of mind when all of a sudden they decided the film was too strange and they didn't know how to handle putting out the film under their brand. Even despite knowing that they wanted Henry Selick on board with their studio again in the first place for that surreal, darker style, why would you hire Henry Selick after seeing Coraline and then not expect something similar to Coraline? John Lasseter did the good old bait and switch and decided he wanted to change the story to be more Disney-fied, and then I guess Disney pulled out anyway as the production costs were getting too high because of the changes made. Henry Selick went on to make Wendell and Wild, and John Lasseter went on to make Luck.
Being in business with Huggy Bear, which is John, that's what we all call John Lasseter.
Why'd you call him Huggy Bear?
Well, he's known for hugging a little too long.
Oh.
Since then, Henry has kept the puppet shelved, putting it on the back burner instead of totally forgetting about it. I think that really shows how much hope he had and still has for this being in his catalog. He tried to shop it around and present it to Laika, but they couldn't figure out finances either, and up until recently, it was silent regarding the project until after Wendell and Wild came out on Netflix, where he brought back up the topic, stating he had gotten the rights from Disney back and hopes to go from there. I think what we've learned from this film is that you can't put anything related to shadows in an animated movie if you want it to survive.
But guess what? I got the rights back from Disney, and maybe if the new film is considered a success, maybe I'll revive the Shadow King.
Moving on, we got Wes Ball's canceled Mouse Guard film, an adaptation of the Mouse Guard comic series by David Peterson. Now, this is more mocap CGI rather than 3D or 2D animation, but I just really need to talk about this movie. Wes Ball you might know from the Maze Runner films that critics hated, but I stood by rooting for. Anyone who says these films aren't peak entertainment is my enemy. He also recently got to redeem himself with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, as well as being set as the director for the Legend of Zelda film. After Mouse Guard's cancellation, Wes Ball released some mock-up footage made with Unreal Engine to showcase the look the film was going to go for, and I can't help but feel Wes Ball's obsession with mocap kind of prohibits what could be a spectacular animated film. I know I'm biased, but the overly realistic anthropomorphic look that the film seemed to be going for misses the mark for me. Specifically with how the mice look, it does not match the juxtaposition of the cute mice wearing armor in the books. I picture more of a Don Bluth style working better, but who knows. On the other hand, for being mock-up footage, this is still incredible, and do not get me started on the concept art that blows my mind and also completely devastates me. We've been desperately needing a new fantasy epic franchise so bad, and Mouse Guard was right there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Mouse Guard was going to be produced by Fox with close to a $170 million budget. Similar to the comics, the movie would take place in a medieval setting and would follow a brotherhood of mice whose sole duty is protecting their home village from predators and serving as bodyguards as the mice civilians make passage in open wilderness. The movie was going to star Idris Elba, Andy Serkis, Thomas Brody Sangster, with Matt Reeves as one of the producers. The film ended up being thrown in the trash 2 weeks before production was set to start when Fox merged with Disney, and Disney decided the film, one, had too high of a budget, actually kind of reasonable if you ignore that this is Disney saying this, and two, had been too similar to their recent live-action remakes at the time that also featured CGI animals, which is not as reasonable, just actually laughable. If Disney actually cared about how similar their films were, they wouldn't make live-action remakes in the first place. Wes Ball has since made several posts about how devastated he is this film didn't come to fruition. It always makes me more sad when a creator of something canceled really cares about it. I feel like sometimes the creator behind a scrapped project will admit it just didn't work out for the better, but it seems Wes Ball still lays awake at night thinking about this movie. His Twitter bio reads "dreaming of Mouse Guard." Thankfully, Disney did give everybody involved in this film permission to shop it around, so there's not all hope lost. Fifth on the list, we got an adult 2D animated film, Big Bugman, starring Brendan Fraser, basically the Chris Pratt of the late 90s, early 2000s. This one is really interesting out of the mix as it's aimed specifically towards an adult audience, something which is not seen as much with animated movies, except for recently with Genndy Tartakovsky's Fixed, which, now that I'm thinking about it, that one might have also been canceled. Big Bugman started production in the early 2000s at Studio Free Studios with Bob Bendenson, a writer on The Simpsons, and Peter Shin, a supervising director on Family Guy, at the helm. The plot was going to follow a candy factory worker named Howard Kind, and after being bitten by bugs, he turns into, of course, Bugman, and eventually the other characters would come in as Bugman struggles with the spotlight and the corruption of fame, which I guess is a common plot point for canceled movies. I don't know the correlation of him working at a candy factory and him him turning into Bugman, and I guess I'll never know. No hate, but the plot gives off the sense that they were just throwing things together. I can't blame them though, because you're kind of forced into an unaimed story when you have a character as simple and open-ended as Bugman. However, judging on the concept art, that was almost the point. It was supposed to have an all-over-the-place, grotesque feel to it. To me, it feels kind of reminiscent of the sketchy, simple style of like 16 or The Weekenders. Big Bugman's very important, specifically because it was Marlon Brando's last role, famous for The Godfather, Apocalypse Now. You know this guy. Big Bugman would have soloed The Godfather, let's be honest. Despite his declining health and being on oxygen during the production, he was persistent on playing the voice of Miss Sour. He not only had the dream of performing in a woman's role and cosplayed as Miss Sour while recording his voice lines, but also said that this was the best time he's ever had working on a movie.
Down the hall, walk into the den, and there, perched and poised, was Mrs. Sour, the character, from head to toe. Blonde wig, black gloves, jewelry, makeup, the whole 9 yards.
This being his last role seemed to be almost the basis of promo and teasing for the film, as seen in this news article, which just makes the fact it never got out of the storyboard phase super sad and confusing. The movie was set to release in 2006, the year I was born, and then it kept getting delayed until eventually it was never brought back up again. The only reasons I could find for it being scrapped were number one, Marlon Brando passing away, obviously. He completed his lines, but maybe that stunted progress to finish it, definitely with his excitement probably fueling motivation. And the second reason comes from the voice director, who stated that its risque tone, which felt like South Park without being clever, was the cause of delay and maybe the studio changing their mind. Hopefully one day we get a script, if anything, or some voice recordings in honor of Marlon Brando. If I had a nickel for every time a movie involving cats was scrapped, I would have 2 nickels, but 6th and 7th on the list, we have Fraidy Cat and the animated Cats musical. I'm just gonna pair them into one segment. Fraidy Cat was an action comedy film pitched and developed at Disney in the mid-2000s. It was going to be a parody satire based on Alfred Hitchcock films, an animated Disney take on the mystery noir genre. The plot would follow Oscar the cat and a cockatoo who are living a luxurious life in their owner's London flat. However, their spoiled lives are flipped upside down when a neighborhood pet is kidnapped, presumably Aiton, and Oscar gets blamed for the crime. So Oscar and the cockatoo have to go on a journey to clear his name and find the real perpetrator. I would have ate this film up specifically because I'm a sucker for falsely accused stories and the journey to prove other characters wrong, and I want to see it in more animated films. It was going to be Ron Clements and John Musker's first film with computer animation. These are the guys behind Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Hercules, Moana, basically every good Disney movie. Originally, however, Fraidy Cat was Piet Kroon's idea and concept, who came up with it at Disney after he left Warner Brothers after the failure of Osmosis Jones, which he was animation director of, but he couldn't get Fraidy Cat's plot elements to come together as a whole and lead into each other smoothly, so he left the production, which I feel like at that point, if the person who came up with it can't get it going, then it's probably not the best sign of a project working out. But Ron and John made it work and gathered a strong story team, and the first screening showcasing the story reels is said to have been a hit. It was allegedly as well received as some of the best Disney films, so it was clear this was something special, and that leads to its cancellation. The reason for Fraidy Cat's cancellation is another case of a studio deciding that it would probably not perform well or be easy to market. Nothing to do with the actual quality of the film. Although most of the animators were on board, president of Disney Animation at the time, David Stanton, assumed kids would not be interested in an Alfred Hitchcock parody, and therefore there would not be commercial appeal for it. But I think Hitchcock not being relevant to children was used more as an excuse by David Stanton, specifically not seeing it being marketable, as I personally feel like a good movie is able to pay homage to other stories and directors without it really affecting the movie's quality, if you know the reference or not. Also, we're talking about an animated cat, by the way. What do you mean not marketable? That was literally half of animated movies for a while. This resulted in Ron and John leaving Disney for a bit, as they felt like their own opinions on the films they were making had no voice. Speaking of a hit, we almost got a 2D animated adaptation of the musical Cats from Steven Spielberg and his animation studio Amblination, the studio behind An American Tail, Fievel Goes West. You cannot think of that movie and not feel sad because of how well its style would fit Cats. Amblination was formed as basically competition with Disney, and Steven Spielberg's main goal was to bring live-action sensibilities to animation. Steven Spielberg and the creator of the musical, Lloyd Webber, were good friends, which only made more sense for them to collaborate. The plot was going to be pretty much a copy of the musical, but with added original songs made only for the movie. And the setting change, Steven Spielberg decided it would take place in London during World War II, and visually the film would go for a destroyed, depressing environment. If you've never heard of the Cats musical, it follows the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles, and the night they make the Jellicle choice by deciding which cat will ascend to the Heaviside layer and come back to a new life. I actually have no idea what this means. I've never seen Cats, I just really like the idea of more animated musicals. There's so much to play with when it comes to them, and yeah, sure, a movie like Frozen has musical scenes, it really isn't its defining factor. I want a legit musical turned into animation, like bring a recording device to a Cats performance and then get a studio to animate that. The film was in partnership with animation veterans behind Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and similar to that film, they wanted Cats to be a hybrid movie, mixing real scale models for sets with 2D characters. The production of this film was filled with so much hope and ambition. The heads of the departments had a kickoff by literally going to watch Cats the musical together. But all of that excitement went out the window when the film's producers realized how difficult an adaptation of basically individual stories based on poems would be, and they couldn't work on a script confidently if that was the structure, and instead of working around that and just coming up with their own structured story, they stopped 6 months in. Eventually, the studio relocated to LA with a new team that still wanted to take a stab at it. However, they ended up coming under the same issues. They wanted it to follow the episodic vibe and still keep it feeling like a feature film, and nobody could agree on how to go about it. Even Spielberg and Lloyd Webber were starting to butt heads on it, and although it was still being slowly developed after this, it died when Amblination decided to shut down after the flop of Balto. Now, you've heard of canceled cat movies, but have you heard of the canceled elephant CGI animated film, The Legend of Tembo, slated for a 2014 release? Directed and produced by Aaron Blaise and Chuck Williams, Aaron Blaise's name instantly stands out. Legendary animator behind Brother Bear, supervising animator on The Lion King. He's a YouTuber now. The Legend of Tembo was going to follow a baby African elephant who is captured and sent to India. There he becomes a fierce battle elephant and will have to become something that he is not to return to his home. A fish out of water animated movie, you already have me hooked. With Tembo being such an empathetic elephant, the film would build on the ideas of loss of innocence and how hatred is taught by man and not by heart, giving me strong Iron Giant energy. The poster showing little Tembo and then him as a battle elephant is crazy. The film was going to come out under Digital Domain Media Group's Tradition Studios. DDMG's parent company started to put out family animated features, and Tembo was going to be its debut. Digital Domain Media is a visual effects studio that has been responsible for 500 CGI films. There's not much information I have other than that on this project. I just really love this idea. This movie has a very simple reason for being canceled, which is Digital Domain Tradition Studios straight up going bankrupt. No disagreements, no production problems from what I can tell. That was the ending of it. We've been getting concept art and animation tests ever since. Aaron Blaise said on Twitter, "Who knows, maybe one day it will still come to pass. I will give my life for Tembo. Start the Kickstarter now, Aaron Blaise." On to the next one, we got My Peoples, also known as Once in a Blue Moon, also known as Elgin's Peoples, Angel and Her No Good Sister, and A Few Good Ghosts. I've been waiting to do this one forever. I've seen it talked about in basically every canceled movies video on YouTube, and it's my turn to cover it. A parody of Romeo and Juliet, hell yeah, I'm a genius in this field. I watched Romeo and Juliet maybe 100 times when it came out. It's a canceled fantasy film directed by Barry Cook, co-director of Mulan. It was going to have a star-studded cast consisting of Dolly Parton, Travis Tritt, Lily Tomlin, the list goes on. Set in Texas in the 1940s, My Peoples was to tell the story of two feuding families, the Harpers and the McGees, whose two children, Elgin and Rose, fall in love. Elgin Harper creates dolls from various household objects and ships one doll named Angel to flirt with Rose McGee. However, a magic potion from Rose's father, Old Man McGee, backfires and brings the doll to life. Angel abandons her mission and proceeds to leave town, at which the other dolls pursue her so she can unite the families. I'll be honest, I skipped over this movie 2 times because the concept art wasn't really my thing, but this plot has such a fun twist and so much emotion can be played with the idea of a doll coming to life to unite star-crossed lovers.
Listen, Missy, you got one purpose in life, to bring Elgin and Rose back together. Now go do your job.
It was based on a short story Barry Cook had written, and he pitched the concept of making it into a film to Michael Eisner and Thomas Schumacher, who both first agreed but then worried about its simplicity and also thought it would fit better as a live-action feature. So Barry went back to the drawing board and made it a tad bit more convoluted, adding 7 characters. And Michael Eisner is quoted to have said after a test screening following 3 plot and title changes, "You folks finally have a movie here." However, that was not true, as he went on to announce the cancellation of the project project in a company email. Cook believed it was scrapped to make room for Chicken Little, which seemed more marketable. The project's cancellation and the later closing of the Florida studio led to nearly 260 artists losing their jobs. I do want to keep in mind this is like only one story I got from looking through the film on Google. There's 2 different stories about how it got canceled floating around. The other rumor being that David Stanton, who replaced Thomas Schumacher as head of animation, came in and saw the story reel and was unimpressed, asking for immediate rewrites. And then he flew to Florida Animation to announce the project was over, which is believable. David Stanton seemed to have been at the foot of cancellations. Put him and John Lasseter in a vault. Do not let them decide what movies get made or not. Fun fact, the characters were later used in Meet the Robinsons as part of the failed inventions of Cornelius, a reference to what could have been. Coming in 11th is DreamWorks canceled RUMBLEWICK, one I'm not sure if I've ever talked about before. It only looks slightly familiar. Based on the book Unwilling Witch by Highwind Aram, it was announced in 2011 with Tim Johnson and Jim Hersfeld directing it together. Tim Johnson directed Ants, Over the Hedge, Home, every single childhood movie practically, whereas Jim Hersfeld worked on the screenplays of Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers. RUMBLEWICK synopsis being, RUMBLEWICK will follow the adventures of a magician's rabbit for whom the invitation to learn real magic and train as a witch is familiar seems like a dream come true. But the dream becomes a nightmare when he discovers he's really a pawn in a game between rival witches. Having learned the hard way that when something seems too good to be true, it probably is, he must outsmart them. Tim and Jim were both very excited to work on this movie as they knew how much fun they could have with witches in the animation world and how much they could push its comedic sensibilities. I have absolutely no clue the reason it was canceled, just another case of DreamWorks pretending it was never started in the first place. All signs are pointing to financial troubles. Next we got Chicken Little 2 and Dumbo 2 and Mort. I'm sorry half of this video is just Disney movies. I made the mistake of not covering enough of them in the last parts and they're piling up. Chicken Little 2 has been requested for this series so many times, like half the comment section. The first canceled sequel of this video. It was set to be a direct-to-DVD sequel made by Disney Toon Studios, directed by Clay Hall, following Chicken Little caught in a love triangle between his childhood sweetheart, Abby the Mallard, and a foreign exchange French sheep student named Rafaela. Abby tries winning over Chicken Little's heart by using a face cream that makes you beautiful, which ends up turning her famous and her whole personality shifts for the worse. Canceled by John Lasseter after he took over Disney Animation Studios. He keeps haunting me. Another canceled Disney sequel was Dumbo 2. It was set to be directed by Robert C. Ramirez and was scheduled to release around Thanksgiving 2001. I'm guessing this was also a straight-to-DVD sequel, as Disney at the time really didn't make sequels to their traditional films that were put in the theaters. The trailer can actually be found on the DVD release of the 60th anniversary edition of Dumbo. The plot taking place one day after the first movie and would follow Dumbo and other animals getting split up and lost in New York, literally just Home Alone 2, and on their way back to each other, they all individually try to sort out their childhood issues, and we'd also get an explanation of Mr. Jumbo. Here is all the gorgeous concept art for the film. It would have maybe been on the better side of straight-to-DVD sequels. Also canceled by John Lasseter, are you flipping kidding me? And the final canceled Disney movie is Mort. Mort was meant to be a traditionally animated film adaptation of the Discworld novels. This one is another Ron Clements and John Musker project. The plot would follow Mort, a young man who death whisks away to train as his apprentice, but on his first mission, Mort ends up preventing the assassination of a princess, which puts the fabric of space in jeopardy. Doesn't sound like an animated Disney movie to me. It sounds like a sequel to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It never got past the conceptual phase, cancellation reason being that Disney was unwilling to buy the Discworld rights as a package. An author of the book, Terry Pratchett, was said to be very difficult when it came to Hollywood for good reason. Another reason being higher-ups not thinking Death would be good as a major character. John and Ron ended up moving on from the project and went on to work on Moana right after. Ladies and gentlemen, to end off this video, we got the bonus canceled movies with a lot less footage or concept art to show. Starting off with my favorite, and that is the Batman Beyond animated movie. I emphasize bonus for this one because I wouldn't consider this one a canceled movie, as to get your film canceled and scrapped, it first has to be greenlit and actually put into production. Batman Beyond was solely a pitch to Warner Brothers from Patrick Harpin and Yuki Demers. Yuki Demers is who caught my eye specifically because he worked on both Spider-Verse movies, and it seems he pushed this movie visually to expand on that art style. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think it having the Spider-Verse style is the only highlight of it, but I just really think Batman looks so good with this aesthetic. Batman has always worked as an atmospheric superhero, especially in animation. It's what makes the Batman video game so good because you can feel the wind as he glides, and Batman in the theater looking like this, just oh my god, goosebumps. Now, for lore purposes, Batman Beyond the show is a spin-off of Batman starring a teenage Batman named Terry, who resides in a futuristic Gotham City. It can be compared to the recent TMNT spin-off, The Last Ronin, that follows one of the Turtles who is the only one that is alive in a dystopian future, and this film was going to feature a similar backstory and plot to that. Instead of it being outright cancelled, Warner Brothers just said that there would be no possibility of them doing a Batman Beyond movie. I have no idea why that is, but I'm guessing they had issues with the confusingness of a Batman who is not Bruce Wayne Batman. They don't think the Terry McGinnis Batman is as sellable, and considering James Gunn is focusing on revamping Batman for future trilogies, there's probably no eyes on it. By now, you've probably heard of the live-action Harold and the Purple Crayon movie starring Zachary Levi and how bad it is. It's one of those movies that you can't help but wonder if it's intentionally bad, because it's insane to think a studio in their right mind really thought, hey, we should do something with Harold and the Purple Crayon, but instead of it being about Harold the baby with a purple crayon, it's gonna be Harold as a grown adult man. But what makes me more upset is that there was actually going to be an animated Harold and the Purple Crayon film from Sony Animation, and not only was it gonna be faithful to the art of the books, but Harold would remain a baby. Sony Animation Pictures started working on this film in 2010 with these two images from art director Michael Korinsky being the only concept art we've gotten, which makes the actual production of this film kind of mysterious. I don't know if it even got past this concept art. Other details I found is that it was supposedly going to be in partnership with Columbia Pictures and Will Smith's Overbrook Entertainment, which exists, I guess. Writing the screenplay was going to be Josh Klausner, who did Shrek Forever After. This is such an all-around confusing pairing, but it might have worked. Apparently, it didn't though, because it was never seen again, and cancellation reasons are unknown, outside of some people speculating it was maybe due to the 2014 Sony hack. Speaking of children's books almost becoming animated movies, but then being turned into live-action films later on, we have Disney's Thrown Away Where the Wild Things Are, animated adaptation developed in 1983. This one is not as upsetting as Harold and the Purple Crayon, as the live-action Where the Wild Things Are is pretty fondly talked about to this day. It has a very specific fever dream charm to it that just works, but I do, of course, with my bias, think animation would work for the concept way better, especially for a story that's supposed to be so otherworldly. The film was going to be a 2D and 3D hybrid where the backgrounds would be CGI and the characters would be traditional with an airbrush touch to give them this 3D look that would better mix with the environments. The movie was going to follow the same plot as the book, following a boy named Max who dresses up in a wolf costume, and after being sent to bed without supper as punishment for bad behavior in the house, his bedroom then transforms magically into this island filled with beasts. The film was being directed and created by John Lasseter and Glenn Keane, and after making and showing test footage, employees in Disney as a studio itself thought the hybrid animation was too risky from what they were comfortable with at the time. It was deemed too expensive, and mainly that it would be too difficult to expand a 40-page book into a full feature-length film. We got the Power Rangers canceled animated movie, another one that shocks me because it makes so much more sense than the recent live-action movies. This one's titled Power Rangers Origins. This was set to be the 2015 Transformers 1 before Transformers 1. The existence of this film was made known after a trailer was posted to a Power Rangers fan forum site and was then later uploaded to Vimeo by a director working at the Korean studio ZAG. I was only made aware of this movie when the posters were posted to Twitter, and I didn't realize it wasn't a new film. It was going to be an animated version of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series. It was going to tell the backstory of all the Power Rangers becoming Power Rangers, but was stopped in 2012 with no reasons known. Chihuahua. This might be the most recent one on this list and is the last movie today. I feel like I don't even need to tell you who's behind this film. It's screaming Jorge Gutierrez all over it. I could blur it and you would still guess that. The culture, the art style, I love it already. Canceled by Netflix, it would have starred Gabriel Iglesias Fluffy as the dog, a perfect pairing, and would follow Chacho the Chihuahua entering an international fight tournament after being made aware that his beloved home is in danger, and he would have to compete against animal fighters from all over the world. An animated movie revolving around a fighting tournament actually sounds entertaining and fun as hell. The movie's cancellation was announced by Jorge personally, who just tweeted Hollywood with a sketch saying his movie's dead. He confirmed that it died by creative differences, and he still seems excited to try and get it made somewhere else. In a time where AI slop is being thrown at you from every direction and the movie market turning towards it, we're in a time where we need to stand up and appreciate real human projects more than anything. Studios have gotten so used to having superficial, scientifically made to please you hits that it devastates me to take a look at what could have been if companies let their guards down more often and went back to a time where they were just guessing and letting it play out. Is it financially smart to do that? Maybe not, but I think it's better to spend time on something like The Shadow King and maybe get a timeless classic people cosplay and draw fan art for, rather than putting out something like Moana 2 that sure makes lots of money, but not a single person is going to buy anything from that movie, not a single plot line remembered. Sometimes these canceled animated movies come out of the grave and get the chance to shine again and make people happy once and for all. I can't believe it's happening. By the way, this is not the last part. I just said that to make this video more exciting. I had so much fun talking about these. I'll definitely continue the series. Thanks everybody for watching. I have my own canceled project, which was a Pixar ranking collab with Haminations I recorded 2 years ago that I still get asked about. And now I know what it's like to be the creators of these scrapped movies. Might have some beef by the end of this video and will be forced to box. Cancellation reason being I was too nervous to listen to the 1 hour recording because I stuttered so much while talking to him. But Cars 2, also I get PTSD because the doctor's office, it has had Cars 2 stickers on the walls for like. But if you guys want me to throw the audio like a podcast onto my second channel, or maybe even finally turn it into a finished video, get this video to 15,000 likes and I will do it. Okay, thank you guys. Stay awesome. Bye!
Have to win just cause a man in a big coat said I think I'd rather end up dead and listen to a really old man. Does our life have to stop just cause we need to feed him slop? I think we should go and run in the woods and forget if we gotta be good and live our life. All we have to do is gotta be kind, play in the sand, make a band, and if they want us to stop, we'll tell them we can't.